So, you're considering buying your own airplane? We've had our CMAX for over 4 years. Let us tell you about our experience and what the top 5 considerations of buying and operating your own airplane are. Who hasn't dreamed of owning their own airplane? As pilots and aspiring pilots, this dream is even more acute. Having the freedom to experience the wonders of flight in your own aircraft, to come and go as you please without either renting or joining clubs, and being truly in command of your aviation exploits are all at the heart of this dream. The fun that comes with aircraft ownership is amazing. Having been lucky enough to realize this dream ourselves, we'd like to share with you, after 4 years of owning our own airplane, the top 5 aspects of aircraft ownership that you need to consider prior to obtaining your first aircraft. Before we get into the list, we'd like to start out by saying that the enjoyment and satisfaction that comes with aircraft ownership requires an even higher level of responsibility than merely exercising the privileges of your pilot certificate as a non-owner. As a prospective owner, you need to acknowledge your responsibility for not only your own proficiency, but also the airworthiness condition of your plane, and therefore, the monetary expenditures you'll need to make in regard to both of those areas. Okay, let's get started. Item 1, match your aircraft selection to your mission profile. This would seem to be a simple thing, but it's a bit more complex decision than one would think, and it can be a real determinant to the happiness you get from your ownership experience. Here are some things to consider when deciding what is the right aircraft for you. Is this a recreational or professional tool? The capabilities between a recreational aircraft and a professional traveling machine are going to be widely different, and they'll drive a lot of the benefits and costs of ownership, as well as your skills and proficiency. So think long and hard about your typical pattern of use. Is it mostly VFR locally, or is it long-distance travel and instrument conditions? Or is it something in between? What's your expected passenger count? Again, the needs here will also drive the type of aircraft you select. Are you generally out alone, with a friend or spouse typically, or do you have a burgeoning family that will travel with you most of the time? This is something you'll have to analyze based on your past flying and will definitely vary. What geographic areas and environmental conditions will you typically operate in? Your geographic region can significantly affect your decision. If you plan on operating in mountainous terrain or high-density altitude conditions, your aircraft selection is most likely going to be quite different than if you operate near the coasts in lower terrain. Do you want to do off-airport ops like on improved areas or on the water? These considerations will really drive the selection process as well. The environmental conditions you operate in will also have a significant impact on your decision. Are you in snow and ice a lot, salt air, extreme heat? All of these factors and more can really affect the health and maintainability of your aircraft and shouldn't be overlooked in the selection process. Do you have a realistic budget? We've left this for last in our selection criteria because all the previous items are going to drive you to the type, make, and model of aircraft that meet your intended needs. Once you have that decision fairly fleshed out, you can then start evaluating the monetary aspects such as acquisition costs, continuing maintenance costs, service bulletin and airworthiness directive compliance, overhaul reserves, financing, insurance, hangars, and tie-downs. With a little research, most of these costs can be fairly well predicted, but from our experience, as far as continuing maintenance is concerned, whatever number you come up with, add 50%. For us, the decision to go with a CMAX took all these factors into consideration. It's a purely recreational machine for amphibious operations. My recreational flying generally consisted of myself and one other person, so I didn't need 4 seats. I knew we'd be operating in a harsh saltwater environment, so I wanted an aircraft that would resist corrosion and had as few exposed struts and fittings as possible. While I originally considered conventional float-equipped aircraft, analyzing these factors led me to the light sport category of composite aircraft and eventually to the CMAX. Consequently, the acquisition, support, and maintenance costs have fallen well within my budget. Item 2, you really get to know your aircraft. So now that you have your airplane and you begin operating it, you'll quickly develop an intimate familiarity with your airplane that you've probably never had with any other. Unlike renting or operating club aircraft, owning allows you to learn all of the idiosyncrasies of operating and maintaining your aircraft. This is a bit of a double-edged sword. On the one hand, You're able to more closely track the health of your plane. You become aware of all the little scratches, dents, rattles, and leaks. You also learn its flying personality. Like, does a particular wing drop in a stall? How does performance compare to book? And what are the practical handling limits for the things like slips and crosswinds? These are all beneficial aspects of owning, but they also come with the responsibility to fix those items that need attention and to operate in a safe manner consistent with your personal and your plane's limitations. The buck stops with you, and you are solely responsible for making the prudent and safe decisions about maintenance and operational safety. Item 3, proficiency is safety. This may seem counterintuitive. You think, hey, I own this plane and I know its ins and outs, so why this talk of proficiency? I fly this airplane all the time. How can I not be proficient? Great question. When you own your own airplane, complacency can easily creep into your flying simply because you are so familiar with your plane. The accident statistics are full of pilot owners who let their core skills atrophy by not practicing the out of the ordinary. If all you do is fly the pattern or go on local pleasure flights, chances are you aren't practicing things like slow flight, stalls, steep turns, and other performance or ground reference maneuvers. And that can make you complacent and less safe. It's absolutely mandatory that you regularly hone your core skills. You also have to practice the uncommon as well. Develop and follow personal minimums for ceiling, visibility, and crosswinds. Always follow your SOPs and use your checklists. Also expect the unexpected. Last but not least, fly intentionally, meaning always have a plan and some contingencies when you go flying, even if it's just tooling around the local area. Utilize all your resources, get a briefing, look at NOTAMs, and be wary of TFRs as they can pop up unexpectedly. Purposefully use your familiarity with your personal airplane to hone your skills, advance your proficiency, and be the best pilot you can be for you, your passengers, and the public. So if you haven't done so already, please like and subscribe. It helps us out tremendously. We greatly appreciate it. Item 4, maintenance needs will vary. As an owner, the responsibility for maintaining your aircraft falls squarely on your shoulders. That's a big responsibility. Thankfully, you're not alone in your quest to keep your plane in tip-top condition. I cannot stress enough how important it is to find a competent A&P mechanic to work with you on your aircraft. If you aren't an A&P yourself, it's important to understand that just like us pilots, mechanics put a tremendous amount of time, money, and sweat learning their trade. When you find a mechanic you can work with, do everything you can to retain that person, and always remember to value them for their expertise and knowledge. They can make a huge difference on the safety of your aircraft, but also the cost of ownership. Having another professional involved in the continuing oversight and maintenance of your aircraft is absolutely invaluable. They can help spot trends that can be corrected before they become critical and expensive problems down the line. In the same vein of intimate familiarity with your airplane, don't be afraid to get your hands dirty maintaining your plane. But you say, hey Mark, I don't come from a mechanical skills background. How am I going to help at all? I get it. Skills and tools can be hard and expensive to acquire, but that's no reason to fret. Your A&P mechanic or maintenance shop will usually help you learn the basics of maintaining your airplane and help you gain the skills to let you accomplish the preventative maintenance tasks allowed to be performed by the owner under Part 43 of the Federal Aviation Regulations. Owner groups and organizations like AOPA and the Experimental Aircraft Association can also help you learn these skills. Owner-assisted maintenance can help save you money too by allowing you to perform the basic aspects of inspections like pulling maintenance panels, removing fairings and interior items, and cleaning the engine compartment and airframe during regularly scheduled maintenance intervals and annual inspections. These are simple and menial tasks best suited for the owner and not your skilled mechanic. It's also important to remember that the types of operations you perform and the environment you operate in are going to have a huge impact on whether your actual maintenance needs are going to align with your plane's manufacturer's maintenance schedule. The harsher the environment you operate in and the more punishing the operations you perform will have a direct impact on your plane's airworthiness and are going to dramatically reduce your actual maintenance intervals and correspondingly increase your maintenance costs. This isn't an admonition against operating in harsh conditions or performing operations that can induce greater wear and tear on your plane. It's just a reality check for you to be able to align and estimate your maintenance intervals, needs, and costs. For instance, we have found that operating in salt water with our C-MAX requires us to perform maintenance on the landing gear, hardware, brakes, and bearings at 50-hour intervals rather than the longer intervals in the maintenance manual. It took us a while to figure out these intervals, and you'll go through the same process with your plane. But once you nail them down, you'll benefit from maintaining your components rather than replacing them. thereby helping you with your cost of ownership. One last consideration regarding maintenance is the availability of parts for your airplane. The availability of spares is going to vary depending on manufacturer, year, make, and model. In our world with the C-MAX, basic parts are still available from C-MAX as they work through their economic woes. But if I needed some major component, I might be up against the wall. I'm not alone. Sea Ray has also had its own problems, and lots of traditional manufacturers of aircraft don't provide parts support for a huge swath of available aircraft. What this means is that sometimes you'll have to be crafty in procuring or creating your own parts, depending on whether you have a Part 23 aircraft, an SLSA, ELSA, or experimental aircraft. So just consider that aspect in your maintenance, forecasting, and budgeting. Item 5, owning an airplane costs money. I don't think I'm revealing anything new here, but having a stable economic situation is pretty critical to owning your own airplane. I'm not going to get too far into the weeds with C-MAX's cost of ownership here, as I'm working on a more detailed video in that aspect, but suffice it to say that being generous with your cost estimates is going to keep you out of trouble and make your ownership experience better. Obviously, depending on the mission requirements and available suitable aircraft, the purchase price of your airplane is probably going to be one of the larger costs of owning your own airplane. New versus used and the absolutely wide range of aircraft by age and capability are going to have the greatest impact on your procurement costs. This also leads invariably to whether you should purchase your aircraft outright or finance it. There are a lot of variables in this regard, and depending on how you structure your purchase as either an individual, an LLC, or other entity will have a big impact on your procurement and ownership costs with regards to excise taxes, depreciation, and time value of money calculations. Take the time to speak with someone knowledgeable in these areas to minimize your out-of-pocket costs and maximize your tax benefits. Your next biggest costs are going to be your fixed costs of ownership. These are things like debt service if you finance, insurance, recurring inspections, data subscriptions, stores, and the cost of hangars or tie-downs. All of these items will vary depending on aircraft type, kinds of operation, and geography. I think one area where people underestimate their expenditures is with regards to the tools and support equipment they acquire for their airplane and keep in their hangar. Guilty. Fuel, oil, wheel bearings, and other expendables will also vary by aircraft type, your operations, and locality, but are obviously essential to operating your plane, so do the required research to help you figure out your expendables budget. Also, expect the unexpected. I'm a perfect example here with the gear up mishap. There will be events and items that will crop up that you didn't account for, so be ready for those events regardless. This having been said, don't skimp on funding your reserves and rainy day accounts. Properly projecting your costs over time and planning for major component overhaul and unforeseen events like unanticipated damage or airworthiness directives is essential to taking away the financial aspect of your maintenance and repair decision-making process. If you know your airframe or certain components need repair or should be replaced, you really shouldn't be making that decision on the cost, but rather the safety of operations. Having the funds on hand to deal with known overhaul items and unexpected events allows you to make a clear decision based on safety metrics rather than economic metrics. For comparison's sake, in just over 4 years of operating our C-MAX, not including the purchase price, we've put about $125,000 into the operational and reserve funds for our plane. This makes sure we can cover just about any cost that comes our way. Now, to be sure, here in South Florida, hangar space comes at a premium, fuel is expensive, the environment is corrosive, we've had some unanticipated expenses, and we've procured a lot of tools and stores, and that number includes the debt service on the aircraft as well. Your numbers will certainly vary. Just be mindful of the real costs and plan ahead. So, those are our top 5 aspects of aircraft ownership that will shape your ownership experience. We've had a tremendous amount of fun and have taken an incredible amount of joy out of owning our C-MAX. It's an amazing privilege to be able to own and operate a personal airplane, especially an amphibian. The ability to enjoy the natural wonders of our area from the air and the water is priceless, and we look forward to doing it for as long as we're able. I can't say enough how positive our ownership experience has been, and I encourage all of you prospective owners to give it a try. If you do pursue owning your own airplane, please remember that while ownership is incredibly satisfying, it does come with a tremendous amount of responsibility as well. You'll be challenged every day to make the right decisions about your skills, the health of your aircraft, and the safety of your operations, not to mention the financial considerations. I'm going to close today with the word integrity. It's the quality of being honest, sincere, and true to your values and principles. In practice, it means doing the right thing when nobody is watching. As an owner, there really isn't anyone else to hold you accountable for the level of integrity you bring to operating and maintaining your aircraft. It's really up to you to set the standard for safety. So set that bar high, then get out there and have some fun. Thanks again from myself and Margie for stopping by today to the Flip Flop Flyers and spending some of your time with us. We greatly appreciate it. Till next time, cheers.